Hello guys, this one is a long one and it's a doozy. No, it's honestly insane. Just wait until you hear it. Thought about making this into 2 parts, just because it was so long, but I decided to go ahead and make it 1 part. If you like it, I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a like. But anyhow, please enjoy, it's insane. I'm really writing this out as a way to vent, because I'm in a situation where I feel really stuck. Any advice is appreciated, but I'm not sure there's anything that can be said that will actually help. I've tried just about everything. I'm going to start from the beginning. This is a story 2 years in the making, so I'll try to be as thorough as possible. In 2019, I graduated with my master's degree and moved to a relatively rural area for my PhD. Thinking we'd make an investment, my dad and I purchased a house. The intent was to rent it out once I completed my PhD. This house was only a block away from a dive bar where my dad was able to make some pretty good friends. He introduced me to everyone, and everyone let me know that I would be so happy in my new house because my next door neighbor was the absolute nicest guy you could ever meet. So we met the neighbor and he did seem nice enough. He suggested we exchange numbers just in case I ever needed anything, and I thought that was a good idea. What's the worst that can happen, you know? A few days later, my dad left to go back to his home in another state, and I was left on my own devices. Literally, the day after he left, it started. My neighbor texted me while I was away and let me know that he left a gift for me on my front porch. In this text exchange, he started using pet names like Sweetie and Cutie. I went home and he had left a hand-painted feeding dish for my cats in the mailbox. At this point, I wasn't alarmed. He was just being nice, I thought. The next day, he sent some more texts with pet names, and I took the opportunity to make sure he knew I was not interested in anything romantic. He replied back with a rambling text about how all a person ever needs is friends, and he would like to be friends with me. After that, he would send me texts frequently, everything from inviting me fishing to telling me he left more gifts on my porch. I would often not reply, or I would tell him I'm busy. I didn't want to be rude, but I also had no interest in any sort of relationship with him other than being neighborly. One night, I got a text from the manager of the bar down the street, letting me know that if my neighbor knocked on my door, I shouldn't answer. She then told me that my neighbor had walked down to the bar with a hatchet and told the bartender that he was hearing voices that got louder as he got closer to the bar. He threatened to unalive someone with the hatchet if the voices didn't stop. They called the police, and the police took the hatchet from him, but they made no arrest. The manager of the bar picked me up and I spent the night at her house. She told me that the police said my neighbor was on drugs. After that, I tried to keep my distance even more, but things got weirder. One day, I went out to my car to find a dead squirrel in my driveway. This squirrel had very clearly been run over and moved to right in front of my driver's side door. I just stepped over it, got in my car and left. When I returned home, the squirrel was gone. Shortly after, I received a text from my neighbor that said, "Someone or something put a dead squirrel in your driveway. Don't worry, I moved it for you." I suspect he's the one to put the squirrel in my driveway. Another time, I walked out of my house to see he had placed an unspent shotgun shell on the brick in front of his yard. He came out and told me that this was to serve as warning for anyone walking between our houses. For the next couple of months, I did my best to avoid him. He would text me inviting me over, and I would come up with an excuse or just ignore him completely. I wanted to remain cordial since he was my neighbor, but it was getting very annoying and I was uncomfortable. He would text me as soon as I got home, telling me that he was watching me come and go from my house. Around Halloween, he had crafted a large casket and wrote, "Here lies the last son of a bee who played mind games, November 2012. What on earth? All this time still sending me texts. Eventually I got fed up and I stopped responding completely. Less than 2 weeks after I stopped responding completely, he threw a 50-pound flower pot at my front door. You know those big concrete planters? Yeah, one of those. I called the police, who advised me to get a stalking no contact order. A few days later, I was watching TV when a notification popped up that my neighbor was trying to cast a video to my screen. I declined it twice. I filed another report with the police. During this time, I started the process of getting a stalking no contact order. I saw 3 different victim advocates who all told me different things. I went out of town for a conference, and during that time, someone attempted to break into my house. I had an ATD security system, so while they didn't succeed, I was aware of the attempt. After the conference, I came home to the entire world shutting down because of you know what. I was trapped in my home 24/7 and my stalker neighbor next door. Luckily, court proceedings for protection orders didn't stop. Right before court, he sent me a text telling me that he was sorry for what he'd done. That he could tell when he saw me outside that he made me uncomfortable. Then he went on to tell me that he can tell my hair has gotten longer and I look beautiful. I went to court and provided all of the evidence that I had, the timeline of everything that had ever happened, the text he'd sent me asking if I wanted a massage, the text I sent him telling him that the way he was speaking to me was inappropriate, the text saying that he knew he made me uncomfortable. I told the judge that I suspected that he had attempted to break into my house while I was out of town. The kicker is, he didn't deny any of it. Actually, he told the judge that he took full accountability of everything. He said that he was in recovery and trying to turn over a new leaf. He didn't oppose the protection order at all, so in March 2020, I actually received the stalking no contact order. Everything was pretty quiet for a while. I mean, he did some weird stuff, but that's because he's a weird guy. It wasn't anything that made me fear for my safety. That is, until he got on drugs again. At this time, we found an unspent shotgun casing in my flower bed. It was consistent with the one that he had previously used to send a warning. This occurred a couple of months after I started dating my boyfriend, and I suspect it was a warning to him. After this, and for a variety of reasons, my boyfriend moved in with me. He moved in pretty quickly, but everything turned out fine. We're still together and as happy as our relationship can be. New Year's Eve 2021, I was awoken to yelling. I turned on my security cameras and got footage of him sticking his head out his window and screaming obscenities at my bedroom window for about 7 minutes. It doesn't sound like a long time, but when your stalker is screaming threats and obscenities, 7 minutes is a very long time. He called me a harlot. He said, "Happy effing New Year." He said he was going to blow up his house with gas line. I called the police, who responded. They told me that he never said my name, so they can't prove it was a violation of the protection order. The officer said, and I quote, "There's nothing illegal about yelling in your own house." They left without even speaking to him. All I could do at this point was do my best to avoid him. I parked on the street because my driveway is pretty close to his front porch. I got used to living with my curtains down. I always made sure my camera was charged, all 5 of them. Yes, because of him, I spent over $1,000 on camera. Every inch of my yard was covered. Since then, he's been seen by me and by other neighbors, talking to people who aren't there, going outside and screaming nonsense, things like, "I have Cheerios on my necklace," or other obscenities. This basically brings me to last week. In the morning, I was getting ready for the day when I heard screaming. Someone's going to die over this sweatshirt. I turned on the cameras. I got footage of him walking around the alley behind my house screaming, "Are you effing proud? How about I get my shotgun? I'll get everybody all fired up." I called the police. Once again, they didn't charge him with violation of the protection order. Instead, they gave him an ordinance violation for disrupting the peace. The police told me that it seemed like he's off his medications again, and that was that. They left. Last night, I was awoken to hammering outside my window at 1 a.m. He was cutting down his privacy fence horizontally. I called the police for a noise complaint and they just told him to stop, and that was that. As I write this, he is outside continuing to horizontally cut down his privacy fence. That means the privacy fence only stands about 3 feet tall now. This was the one thing that made me feel relatively safe about hanging out in my backyard, and now it's gone. All of this is to say, I'm effing tired. I just want to live in a house where I can be sure that my neighbor won't try to unalive me. Where I can feel confident that he's not going to try and break in. My boyfriend and I are trying to find a house to move, but it's difficult. I'm a graduate student, so I don't make very much money. Renting won't work because I have 4 cats, plus my partner's cat and dog, although we have a place secured for them if necessary. Finding a place to rent with so many animals is difficult, if not impossible. I refuse to rehome them, so maybe it's partially my fault I'm stuck in this situation. My dad has agreed to co-sign another mortgage, and I've gotten a second job. We should be able to save enough money within a few months, but until then I'm stuck. I just don't know what to do. I'm tired, I'm angry, so I figured I'd write this to vent. If you've made it this far, thanks for reading it all. There are still so many instances that I've left out. I'm just so exhausted. Hey guys, no one really asked for it, but I'm doing an update because I got a lot of good advice. Since my last post, I reached out to my neighbor's family and let them know that I fear for my life. I told them that there's a way they can get him institutionalized through the court if he was refusing to seek mental health treatment. His family just said that they would talk to him, or have a discussion with him, etc., and that they were aware of the method to get him committed. This was almost 2 weeks ago at this point. Well, that pretty much backfired. Last night, at approximately 10:30 p.m., he was yelling at my camera. He was saying a lot of nonsensical things, but at one point he said that there was nothing wrong with his head or medication, and that I should, quote-unquote, try out a psych ward for my mother effing self. Of course, I called the police because I considered this a violation of the no contact order. The police came and I got the worst officer. He told me that it wasn't stalking because he was talking to my camera and not me. He didn't even go over and talk to my neighbor. He said he would send the report to the state's attorney's office. I actually do research in the courthouse, and while I was hesitant to bring this up in the course of my professional responsibilities, I finally bit the bullet and did it. I wanted to do everything the right way. Go through the police and set up the chain, but apparently the police make it impossible to do that. I spoke with the attorney today and she was very upset at the way everything was handled. The report has not been sent to their office as of noon today. She called and left a message for the officer for the report and is awaiting to hear back. She told me she can call me tomorrow with an update. At this point, I will be continuing to advocate for myself directly to the attorney. I will be sending every ounce of evidence, including pictures and videos, to the attorney with the hopes that we can file multiple charges of stalking against him. Of course, I understand not everything may be prosecutable, but I know I have at least a few things which should stick. I'm really happy to say that I'm satisfied with the way the state's attorney's office is handling it at this point. I've gotten further with them in 1 day than I have with the police department in 18 months. That being said, I'm still looking for a new house. This time, I actually have had quite a few people asking for an update, so here I am. I feel like it's a weird situation because a lot has happened, but at the same time, not really much progress has happened on the court's end. Last time I updated, I ended after I had spoken to the attorney at the courthouse. I had sent them all the evidence they needed, and to this day, I'm still waiting to hear for any updates at all from them. I know the attorney handling my case is swamped, though I've given them some room to breathe, but I'm back to a point where I may start pushing again. After the outburst where he screamed at my camera that I needed to try out a psych ward for myself, my neighbor went on another tirade. He was screaming about how he could see a spirit in the moon or something, and was just generally yelling nonsense at the camera. While it was all nonsense, it was very clear that he was speaking to our cameras. I called the police and they came and again told me that there was nothing that they could do because he was on his own property, blah blah blah. Then while the police were there, he started up again and was screaming while standing on his picnic table about how he doesn't have to apologize to the police, to the FBI, to the university nearby, or anyone. As soon as the police shined their flashlights on him, he said, "I know, I'm sorry. So much for not needing to apologize, huh?" He went on to say that everywhere he goes, he gets picked on. By us, by Walmart, by everyone. Apparently everyone is just picking on him and he's tired of it, so that's why he's screaming and standing on the picnic table. The police still didn't do anything and told me that if they arrested him, it would be unconstitutional. Then they went on to tell me that they have colleagues who know my neighbor's family, and they're confident that my stalker neighbor is incapable of killing someone. After that, things kind of went quiet. Once again, there were weird things that happened or instances of him staring at our house or being an issue to other neighbors, but not to us so much. I can live with him just being weird. I'm not a difficult neighbor. As soon as you're not putting dead squirrels in my driveway, screaming at me or trying to break into my house, I don't have any complaints. That is until this week. 2 days ago, I got a notification that there was motion near the east side of my house, which is where my neighbor lives. I look at the camera and he's bending down doing something, and I don't think anything of it at first. That is until he was there for a long time and I kept getting notifications, so I look outside. Lo and behold, my neighbor has started 2 very small fires on his side of the property line. Why? I'm not sure. He set them and then walked away. My boyfriend and I considered calling the police, but the fires were so small and ended up going out on their own that we decided that it wasn't worth it. All the police would do is show up and maybe give him an ordinance violation for illegal burning. At that time, I considered it a warning because I was due to testify in court against him later that week. Today, actually, nothing of substance came from the court. He didn't show up and he got a default fine of $250 for screaming in the back alley, which I described in the previous post. After this, I spoke with a different non-stalker neighbor who asked me if the stalker neighbor had given me any issues lately. Apparently, stalker neighbor had been giving them issues by taking pictures of their house and doing other nonsense in the alley behind their backyard. Apparently, it was enough to cause alarm to the neighbors, but I don't know exactly what it was he was doing behind their house. Another neighbor had also come to me and told me that the stalker neighbor had been antagonizing him on his bike by following him around and hitting his back tires. I also have him on video screaming at the neighbor's kid while they play on their bikes. Clearly, this is not an issue with just me anymore. One neighbor told me her children don't feel safe playing outside anymore. However, I'm the only one with a restraining order against him. Then that brings me back to today, which today's incident is very, very much grounded in suspicion and speculation because I honestly have no idea what happened, but I find the entire thing very suspicious. So take this information with a grain of salt. A house behind ours caught fire and was engulfed in flames. The whole home is destroyed. Since it just happened today, there isn't any official ruling about how the fire was started. But I've been told that it started on the porch and it was an arson fire. How anyone knows it was an arson fire at this point is beyond me, and I really am not sure that this is the case. Small town gossip goes wild, and maybe not accurate, so I'm not quite jumping to conclusions just yet. However, if it comes out officially that it was an arson fire, I'm going to be highly suspicious of my neighbor. I'm very hesitant to send the police the videos of my neighbors starting fires in between our houses just a couple of days before, because the police never take me seriously. I'm afraid of always reporting things and being treated like the boy who cried wolf. So I'll just keep it to myself for now. If they come out seeking tips or information from the public, then I'll send them the footage. But until then, I have no reason to believe that the police will do anything about the information I provided them. So that's where we are. I've gotten my finances in order to where I can get a mortgage and have a meeting with the mortgage lender next week. Hopefully I will be able to get the F out of here before too long. I'm afraid of the guy burning down my house or doing something else ridiculous. And then the OP added, after I posted this Friday night, another strange incident happened. My neighbor was in his backyard having a fire in his fire pit and spraying down his whole yard with a hose. Not just his yard, but also his garage and shed. I was so paranoid about this that I was just watching my camera like a hawk. I was really afraid he was going to set my house on fire. Eventually, I got tired and decided to lay down and sleep. One of my front cameras had died, and while I knew I needed to get the battery into it, I thought I could wait until the morning. It was the doorbell camera, and while that covers a small area of the porch, it's not good for security. Usually one of the other cameras I have in front, 3 total cameras in the front that capture different parts of the porch, catch what people standing on the porch do, so I thought it was gonna be fine. I was wrong. At around 1:30, someone pounded on my door, very obviously trying to wake me up. I was so scared someone was coming to tell me my house was on fire. I jumped up and looked out the window and there was no one. I'm totally freaked the F out at this point and decided to call 911. We didn't go outside until they arrived, and then we noticed water or some other liquid on the porch, but nothing was caught on video. The police went over and told him to cut it out because they were well aware it was him. They said he had a friend over with him, so it's possible it could have been his friend too. Thankfully, nothing else happened that night, but I still didn't sleep. I'm honestly pretty mad at myself that I didn't go and change the battery, but the doorbell one, which is the one that had died, is the least reliable anyway because it barely even catches me leaving my house, and the other front one usually picks up whenever someone goes to the door. Just didn't want to go outside on my porch at midnight and my boyfriend was already asleep. Regardless, I'll make sure that never happens again because we added another camera to the blind spot. That's 6 cameras in total. The OP then made an update on November 2nd, 2021. The prosecutors let me know that they will not be filing any charges, so I've lost all faith that anyone will help me. Despite the videos, despite the witnesses, none of it matters. This comes after I got him on video threatening to R an old woman down the street, and after there were other individuals who witnessed him threaten to kill me and other neighbors. I'm still waiting to get approval on my mortgage, but I'm supposed to close on November 18th. There's been a lot of uncertainty surrounding whether it will actually be approved because half of my income is ineligible to be counted, so I've had to jump through a lot of hoops with co-signers, etc. But I'm supposed to find out tomorrow definitively if I get the mortgage. If I don't get approved, I guess I'll just be lying about my animals and renting somewhere. Renting is just going to significantly impact my finances and make it so much harder on me in the long run, so I'm not pleased about it. Not only am I being pushed out of my home, it's been hurting me financially, but he'll be just fine. This man will continue to terrorize the neighborhood while everyone around him suffers. The OP then updated on January 20th, 2022. It's been a while since I gave an update and things have gotten a little more wild since. I ended up moving mid-November. I'm far enough away from my ex-neighbor that I've barely seen him in person since. We still own the old house, so I've had to go back and forth to take care of the property and maintain the cameras. Since then, I've still had to deal with his nonsense. Right before we moved, we called the police because he was pouring gasoline on his house. Dude told the police that the reason he was pouring gasoline on his house was because there were people living in his attic and he wanted to scare them out of his house. The police acknowledged that this was disturbing behavior and said they were going to try and commit him to a mental hospital, but I don't think that ever happened. They said, there's nothing illegal about pouring gas in your own house, only illegal if you light it. He also sent a long, rambling text to someone talking about how the entire block was in a conspiracy against him. He called me that B in the text and said that if people didn't stop talking about him, the pieces would fall where they may. We moved about 3 days later. I'm so glad I moved because I know I was in real danger. After we moved, there was an incident where he was standing behind the property staring at the house, holding a baseball bat. He then proceeded to light the baseball bat on fire and swing it around. Another incident, he went on the property by what used to be my bedroom window. He shoved a stick down the earth below the window. Very strange. I called the police and he was ticketed for trespassing. Finally, last Monday, which is the 17th of January, his house was set on fire. The fire originated in the attic. I was called by an insurance fire investigator who asked for all of my fire-related evidence. He told me that it's pretty obvious that the fire was started by someone. There was nothing in his attic that could have started the fire. They're still investigating, but it looks like he might actually face some consequences for his actions at this time. At the very least, it looks like that the insurance company won't pay. He won't be able to live in that house any longer unless his family pays out of pocket. All of this is to say I'm safe. My mental health is much better than it was 3 months ago. My animals are stoked about the new house. There's a lot more windows. Thanks everyone for being concerned about me. It looks like this very terrifying chapter of my life is finally coming to an end. Alright guys, I will be honest, this one kind of just blew my mind. I'm so glad that OP is safe. I'm so glad that that chapter of her life is over. I really hope that the crazy neighbor gets the help that he needs, but honestly, it doesn't look like it. Anyhow, I don't really have much more to add. I really hope that you liked the story, and please subscribe for more stories from Reddit, including updates.